The phone rang, and careers ended before the echo faded. That's how sudden it was. One moment, the New York Jets coaching staff believed they were heading into an offseason of tweaks and patience. The next, the building felt cold, quiet, and unmistakably ruthless. Because when Aaron Glenn finally made his move, even the people closest to him never saw it coming. The Jets' 2025 season didn't just fail. It collapsed in slow motion. A 3-14 record. Dead last in the AFC East. A year that was supposed to represent rebirth instead became a reminder of how brutal this league can be when vision doesn't meet execution. And yet, what's happening now inside one Jets drive might be even more shocking than anything we saw on Sundays. Here's why this matters. What the Jets are doing right now isn't just cleaning house. It's an organizational reset disguised as survival. And the decisions Aaron Glenn is making in these moments could either save his career or bury it permanently. When the season ended, Glenn addressed his assistants with what sounded like reassurance. He told offensive coaches they were free to explore other opportunities. In NFL circles, that's usually code for understanding the business, not a death sentence. According to those in the room, nobody believed firings were imminent. Nobody expected a bloodbath. They were wrong. NFL reporter Connor Hughes revealed that while Glenn gave permission to look around, the staff never anticipated sweeping changes. One source went further, saying the group was completely caught off guard by the firings, especially by how quickly they happened. And that detail matters, because timing tells you intent, and intent tells you fear. Aaron Glenn is afraid of becoming another Jets statistic. Within days, familiar faces were gone. Quarterbacks coach Charles London. Pass game coordinator Scott Turner. Linebackers coach Aaron Curry. Defensive line coach Eric Washington. Assistants Alonso Escalante and Roosevelt Williams. Entire positional rooms wiped clean almost overnight. These weren't symbolic changes. These were deep cuts into Glenn's own inner circle. And then came the move that confirmed everything. Offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand, handpicked to spark an offensive revolution, was fired after just one season. Let that sink in. Engstrand was Glenn's offensive gamble. A bet on innovation. A belief that a fresh mind could fix a franchise stuck in offensive purgatory. Instead, the Jets delivered one of the worst offensive seasons in modern team history. 29th in total yards. 29th in points. Dead last in passing at just 140.3 yards per game. That's not struggling. That's non-functional. The Justin Fields experiment never even got off the runway. Brought in with hope, Fields looked lost, overwhelmed, and out of sync. He was benched for Tyrod Taylor, a steady veteran presence who was never meant to be more than a bridge. When that failed, the Jets turned to Brady Cook, a move that felt more like desperation than development. 3 quarterbacks. One offense. Zero identity. By mid-December, defensive coordinator Steve Wilks was already gone. That firing barely registered nationally because of how numb Jets fans have become to chaos. But inside the building, it was the warning shot. The signal that patience was over. The signal that Aaron Glenn knew his clock was ticking louder by the day. Now, with Engstrand gone, the Jets will enter 2026 with brand new coordinators on both sides of the ball. That's not normal after 1 year. That's a coach fighting for relevance, and Glenn isn't hiding it anymore. With the defense, Glenn can survive. He's a defensive coach at heart. He can call plays himself if needed. He can stabilize that side of the ball. But offense? Offense is where Jets coaches go to die. That's why the front office is moving fast. They don't want potential candidates scooped up. They don't want another experiment. They want someone who has already been through the fire. Enter Frank Reich. According to ESPN's Rich Cimini, the Jets are already talking with veteran coaches, including Reich, about the possibility of becoming the playcaller and offensive coordinator. And that name carries weight. Reich has been a head coach. He's revived quarterbacks. He's coordinated functional, modern offenses in a league that chews up idealists. If Reich takes this job, he'll become the 13th person to call offensive plays for the Jets in just 16 years. Read that again. 13 offensive play callers. 16 seasons. That's not instability. That's institutional trauma. And yet, Reich represents something different. Not hope. Credibility. He's seen chaos before. He understands broken quarterback rooms. He knows what it's like to walk into a building where expectations are toxic and patience is non-existent. But whoever takes this job will inherit a mess. Justin Fields is under contract for 2026. So is Brady Cook. Neither inspires confidence as a franchise cornerstone. The Jets own the number 2 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. But this class doesn't feature a consensus, can't-miss quarterback prospect. There's no Andrew Luck. No Trevor Lawrence. No obvious savior. That means the Jets will have to get creative. Aggressive in the veteran market. Willing to explore trades. Ready to spend capital to fix what they couldn't build. And here's the twist nobody expected. Despite all this turmoil, despite the firings, despite the embarrassment of another lost season, one thing remains intact. The locker room still believes in Aaron Glenn, that's not a rumor. That's not spin. That's real. Players haven't quit on him. Veterans still respect him. Young players still respond to his voice. And in this league, that matters more than any press conference. But belief doesn't erase results. Glenn knows that. That's why the firings were so abrupt. That's why the staff was caught off guard. That's why this feels less like strategy and more like urgency. Glenn is doing what desperate coaches do when they know year 2 isn't a grace period. It's a verdict. The Jets aren't rebuilding anymore. They're reckoning. Every decision from this point forward will be judged through one lens. Does it fix the offense? Because if it doesn't, nothing else matters. Not culture. Not leadership. Not loyalty. And that's why Tanner Engstrand's firing is bigger than it looks. It's an admission. An admission that the vision failed. An admission that Glenn miscalculated. And an admission that the margin for error is now razor thin. The Rooney Rule ensures the Jets will conduct a full search. Interviews will happen. Names will circulate. Rumors will fly. But don't be fooled by the process. This isn't about optics. It's about survival. Because in New York, coaches don't get third chances. If the Jets miss again at offensive coordinator, if the quarterback situation implodes once more, if the offense remains a punchline, Aaron Glenn won't be explaining his vision next January. He'll be explaining what went wrong. And that's why these firings hurt. That's why they shocked the building. That's why they mattered. This wasn't Glenn asserting dominance. This was Glenn confronting reality. The Jets are out of excuses. Out of patience. Out of time. Now the question shifts to you. Was Aaron Glenn right to pull the trigger this fast? Was firing Tanner Engstrand after one season the correct move? Or another chapter in the Jets' never-ending cycle of panic? And if Frank Reich is the answer, does that finally stabilize this franchise, or just delay the inevitable? Drop your take in the comments. Because this decision will define the Jets for years, and Hotspot NFL will be right here when the truth finally comes out. The most dangerous moment for any NFL franchise isn't rock bottom. It's the moment right after, when leadership has to decide whether to stay the course or rip everything apart. That's exactly where the Jets are standing right now, staring straight into the mirror and asking a question they've avoided for years. Is this finally the right guy to lead us out? Because for all the chaos, for all the firings, for all the dysfunction, Aaron Glenn is still standing. And that alone tells you how complicated this situation really is. Inside the building, Glenn's message hasn't changed. Accountability. Toughness. No shortcuts. Players know where they stand with him. They know he's not fake. They know he's not hiding. And in a league full of polished soundbites and corporate cliches, that authenticity travels fast in a locker room. It's why veterans still listen. It's why young players haven't tuned him out. But belief without results is a ticking clock. That's the part Glenn understands better than anyone. This wasn't a rebuild year. This was supposed to be the foundation. The roster wasn't elite, but it wasn't barren either. The defense showed flashes. The effort was there. What failed was the vision on offense. And Glenn took that personally. That's why the firings weren't gradual. No slow leaks. No quiet exits. He ripped the bandage off. Because slow change suggests comfort. Fast change signals urgency. And urgency is the only language that matters in New York. What stunned the staff wasn't just that they were fired. It was that Glenn didn't hesitate. In this league, coaches often protect their people. They deflect. They blame injuries. They buy time. Glenn did the opposite. He chose distance over loyalty. And while that may feel cold, it sends a message to the front office and the locker room alike. No one is safe, including him. That's also why the Engstrand firing cuts so deep. 1 year isn't enough time for most coordinators. Everyone knows that. Systems take time. Quarterbacks need reps. Continuity matters. But there are exceptions, and historically bad offense is one of them. The Jets didn't just struggle, they regressed. There was no weekly improvement. No identity forming. No moments where fans could say, Okay, I see where this is going. And when there's no trajectory, patience evaporates. That's why the Jets didn't wait. They didn't debate. They didn't spin it as a mutual parting. They pulled the plug. Now the offensive coordinator search becomes the most important hire of Glenn's career. This isn't about scheme anymore. It's about stability. It's about someone who can walk into a broken quarterback room and immediately command respect. Someone who won't flinch when the New York media circles. Someone who's been fired before and lived to tell the story. That's why Frank Reich keeps coming up. Reich isn't flashy. He's not the next hot name. He's not going to trend on social media. But he's survived Indianapolis. He's survived Carolina. He's coached quarterbacks at every stage of their careers. He understands how to simplify without dumbing things down. And more importantly, he understands how to manage chaos without becoming it. If Reich takes the job, this won't be about reinvention. It'll be about repair, repairing confidence, repairing fundamentals, repairing trust between playcaller and quarterback. Because right now, the Jets don't have a quarterback problem. They have a belief problem at that position. Justin Fields didn't forget how to play football overnight. Brady Cook didn't suddenly lose his arm. What disappeared was clarity. Reads were late. Progressions were rushed. Play designs didn't help their quarterbacks win. And when that happens, even talented players look lost. That's on coaching. And Glenn knows it. That's why the Jets are expected to be aggressive this offseason. Quietly aggressive. Exploring veteran options. Monitoring trade markets. Doing homework on every possible upgrade. The number 2 pick gives them leverage, but not certainty. And certainty is what this franchise desperately needs. Because if the Jets roll into 2026 with the same questions at quarterback, the same confusion on offense, and the same results on Sundays, it won't matter how much the locker room believes in Aaron Glenn. The league won't. That's the brutal truth. The Jets are no longer rebuilding in theory. They're rebuilding in practice, under pressure, with eyes watching every move. Fans are tired. Players are tired. Ownership is tired. And when patience runs out, it doesn't trickle. It collapses. So when you hear that assistants were caught off guard, remember this. That shock wasn't personal. It was systemic. It was the realization that the safety net was gone. That the franchise had officially entered survival mode. Aaron Glenn didn't promise comfort. He promised honesty. And honesty, in this case, came with pink slips. The next hire will tell us everything. Whether Glenn is doubling down on experience. Whether the Jets are finally prioritizing functionality over flash. Whether this organization has learned anything from 16 years of offensive instability. And that's why this moment matters more than the draft. More than free agency. More than preseason hype. Because coaches define direction. So let's bring it back to you. If you're running the Jets, do you hand the offense to a veteran like Frank Reich and hope stability wins out? Or do you take another swing at innovation and risk repeating history? And most importantly, do you still believe Aaron Glenn is the man to lead this franchise out of the darkness? Sound off in the comments. Hotspot NFL is watching this story closely because what happens next won't just shape the Jets. It'll define how the NFL remembers this era of New York football.